The ward stone beneath Evelyn Croft's palm pulsed with heat. The third time in an hour it had tested her blood. She pressed harder against the cold marble of the apartment's threshold, watching silver runes flare across the doorframe like angry fireflies. "Please," she whispered to the empty air. 24 years old, and she was begging permission from enchanted stones to leave her own home. Not her home. Never hers. The ward stone knew it too. 3 years she'd lived behind these magical barriers. 3 years of Lord Alistair Blackwood's careful neglect. His silver-grey eyes sliding past her at breakfast, his tall frame turning away when she entered a room. The wards tracked every breath she took, every step she made. They would know the instant she tried to leave. That was the point, wasn't it? Immortals didn't trust their mortal wives to stay. Evelyn pulled her hand back. The runes faded to faint scratches in the marble, invisible unless you knew where to look. She'd spent months studying them, tracing their patterns, while Alistair attended his endless society functions without her. Months learning what everyone said was impossible. How to unmake a ward from the inside. The apartment stretched behind her, silent and pristine. 17 rooms she'd dusted and straightened and filled with fresh flowers he never noticed. The servants came Tuesdays and Fridays, but Alistair had forbidden them from speaking to her beyond basic courtesies. Can't have the mortal wife getting ideas above her station. She'd gotten ideas anyway. Her worn leather satchel sat by the door, packed with everything that mattered. Not much in the end. The grey dress she'd worn to their wedding, back when she'd thought his reserve was shyness, not contempt. Her mother's silver locket. The small notebook where she'd recorded every ward pattern, every magical signature, every impossible thing she'd taught herself in the long hours alone. The city beyond the windows glittered with gaslight and magic. Somewhere out there was a life she could build herself. A boarding house with a kind landlady. A job at a bookshop or a tea room. Friends who might actually speak to her. Simple things, impossible things, for a woman bound by blood wards to an immortal lord's property. Evelyn knelt and opened her satchel. Inside, wrapped in silk, was the counterward she'd spent 6 months crafting. It looked like a simple trinket, a circle of twisted copper wire and river stones. No magical signature, nothing that would trigger the apartment's defenses. That was the trick, she'd learned. Magic recognized magic. But mortal cunning, mortal stubbornness, mortal desperation, those were invisible to enchanted stones. Her hands trembled as she placed the counterward against the threshold. The ward stone pulsed again, testing, searching for the magic it expected. Finding nothing. The runes flickered, hesitated. Evelyn held her breath. If this failed, Alistair would know she'd tried to leave. He'd add more wards, stronger ones. She'd never get another chance. But if she stayed, if she spent another year, another decade, another mortal lifetime watching him look through her like she was glass. The runes went dark. The ward stone cooled beneath her palm, its magic confused into silence. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Evelyn grabbed her satchel and stepped across the threshold. No alarms. No flaring light. No invisible hands dragging her back. The hallway outside smelled like beeswax and old wood. Normal things. Real things. She walked toward the stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs. 17 steps to the ground floor, 30 paces to the street door. Then the city, vast and anonymous, where a woman could vanish into the crowd and build a life from nothing. Behind her, the apartment's wards flickered back to life, searching for the mortal wife who should have been trapped inside. But Evelyn Croft was already gone. The ward stone beneath Evelyn's palm was cold, dead. Her simple copper wire charm, twisted into the shape of a river eel, a symbol of slippery escape, had done its work. The silver runes on the doorframe were inert scratches in the marble. She stood frozen on the threshold, her small travel bag clutched in her other hand. This was the moment. But the silence of the apartment was different now. It was no longer oppressive. It was final. She was not simply stepping into a hallway. She was severing a life. Her eyes scanned the room one last time, not with hatred, but with a desperate, aching need to remember. The vase of white lilies on the mantelpiece, their scent a ghost in the air. The specific wear pattern on the rug near the escritoire where she'd paced for 3 years. The way the light fell through the enchanted windows, casting a perpetual, sorrowful grey. This was the cage, but it was also the only home she'd known. A soft, rhythmic squeak broke the silence. Evelyn started, her heart hammering against her ribs. She followed the sound to the service entrance, hidden behind a velvet drape. The door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, she found Mrs. Agnes Poole on her knees, a bucket of soapy water beside her, scrubbing the already spotless flagstones of the back stairwell. The housekeeper's sturdy shoulders worked with a practiced motion, but she wasn't scheduled to be here today. "Mrs. Poole?" Evelyn's voice was a whisper. The older woman jumped, her hand flying to her heart. "Mrs. Blackwood, good heavens, you startled me!" Her sharp eyes, set in a web of kind lines, darted from Evelyn's face to the travel bag, then to the open doorway of the main apartment beyond. The dead wardstone was just visible. Understanding dawned in her gaze, followed by a profound sadness. I had a feeling the silver polish delivery was today. I wanted to check the inventory myself. They both knew it was a lie. Servants' gossip was a currency more fluid than gold, and the news of a broken ward would have spread through the manor's underbelly in minutes. Agnes Poole had come, but not to stop her. "You're leaving," the housekeeper said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn could only nod, a lump of unexpected emotion tightening her throat. For 3 years, this woman had been her only flicker of human kindness. The only person who looked at her truly saw her, and not just Lord Blackwood's mortal bride. Agnes stood slowly, wiping her wet hands on her apron. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of professional composure, but her eyes betrayed her. "He will hunt you to the ends of the earth, child. You know that. The bond, I have a plan to muddy the bond," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength. "Iron, running water, old tricks." "Tricks," Agnes repeated softly, a hint of skepticism in her tone. She stepped closer, her voice dropping even further. "He is not a man to be tricked, Evelyn. He is something else. His resources are not merely monetary. I cannot stay. This existence, it is a slower death." Evelyn's hazel eyes glistened. "The silence, Agnes. The way he looks through me. It's killing me by inches." Agnes Poole's composure cracked. A deep sorrow etched itself onto her face. He wasn't always so. Before the affliction took hold of his heart. She glanced around the empty stairwell, ensuring they were truly alone. "There is a reason for the distance, girl. A terrible reason." Evelyn shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her. "The reason is that I am mortal, a temporary inconvenience, a stain on his immortal lineage." "No." The word was sharp, definitive. Agnes reached into the deep pocket of her apron and pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. "You are wrong. Take this." She pressed the bundle into Evelyn's free hand. It was heavier than it looked. Evelyn unfolded the rough cloth. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket, cold and plain, and a single, long iron nail, its head rusted. "The locket belonged to his mother," Agnes whispered, her words rushing out now, fearful of being overheard. "Immortal, like you. She did not fare well. Keep it close. It may resonate with you. Throw the nail into the river when you cross. It will add confusion to your trail. Iron from the manor's oldest beam." Evelyn stared at the objects, her mind reeling. This was more than sympathy, this was complicity. "Why are you helping me?" Agnes's eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked away. "Because I was here when his mother died. I will not stand by and watch it happen again. Now go. And if you value your life, do not go to family. Do not go anywhere he would expect. He will check there first." She gave Evelyn a gentle but firm push toward the back stairs. "The service exit leads to the mews. Go quickly, and Godspeed." Evelyn clutched the locket and the nail, the metal digging into her palm. She took one last look at the woman who had been her lone ally, her throat too tight for words. She nodded, a gesture of immense gratitude, then turned and fled down the dark, narrow stairs, the sound of her footsteps swallowed by the stone. Agnes Poole watched her go, then picked up her bucket. She poured the soapy water down a drain, washing away any trace of their meeting, her face a portrait of grim resolve. She had just betrayed her master, the most powerful immortal in Veridian, for a chance to save a ghost from repeating the past. Alistair stood in the doorway of their apartment and stared at the space where Evelyn should have been. The ward stone lay dark on the threshold. Dead. 3 years of blood magic, extinguished like a candle flame. He crossed the room in 4 strides. Her wardrobe stood open. Empty hangers swayed on the rail. The grey dress she wore on Tuesdays, gone. The navy one she saved for when Mrs. Poole visited, gone. Even the worn nightgown she'd mended twice. His chest constricted. Not the curse, something worse, something mortal and sharp. She had planned this. Alistair pulled off his right glove. The silvery scars on his hand caught the lamplight as he pressed his palm to the wall beside the wardrobe. He reached for their bond, the blood tie that should have sung between them like a taut wire. Nothing. No. Not nothing. A whisper. A thread so faint he had to hold his breath to sense it at all. She was still in London, still alive. But the connection felt muffled, as though she'd wrapped herself in wool to deaden the sound. Impossible. Mortal wives couldn't hide from blood bonds. The magic was too old, too strong. It lived in the marrow. Alistair moved to her writing desk. The drawer hung open. Her journal, the leather-bound book she thought he didn't know about, was missing. But something else remained. A scrap of paper, folded once. He unfolded it with careful fingers. Copper disrupts silver. Iron confuses gold. Water washes both away. His hand tightened on the note. The paper crumpled. Mortal cunning. She'd found a way to use the natural world against immortal magic. Not breaking the bond. That was impossible. But dampening it. Hiding beneath it, like a fish beneath river stones. "My lord?" Alistair turned. Mrs. Agnes Poole stood in the doorway, her grey dress crisp despite the late hour. Her face was carefully neutral, but her eyes moved past him to the empty wardrobe. "When did you last see her?" His voice came out flat. "Yesterday morning." Mrs. Poole stepped inside. "She asked me about the markets near the Thames. Which ones sold copper wire?" "And you told her?" "She's your wife, my lord, not your prisoner." Mrs. Poole met his gaze without flinching. Though I confess I wondered about the distinction. The words struck like a slap. Alistair looked away first. "She doesn't understand," he said. The curse is yours, Lord Blackwood, not hers." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a church bell tolled midnight. Mrs. Poole moved to the writing desk. She touched the open drawer with one finger. She left the household accounts and the marketing lists. She took only what was hers. Nothing here was hers. The words tasted bitter. Everything belonged to me, including her. Did it? Mrs. Poole turned to face him. 3 years she's lived in these rooms. 3 years you've kept her locked away like a secret shame. And in all that time, my lord, did you ever once ask what she wanted? Alistair's jaw tightened. You forget yourself. Perhaps. Or perhaps I remember what you've forgotten. Mrs. Poole straightened her shoulders. You married her to break your curse, but you never told her the cost. You never warned her what the Thorned Heart would demand. I was protecting her. You were protecting yourself. Mrs. Poole's voice gentled. From the pain of losing her when the curse takes its due. The words hung in the air between them. Alistair pressed his scarred hand against his chest. Beneath his ribs, something twisted. The curse stirred, sensing his distress, feeding on it. Where would she go? He asked quietly. Somewhere you can't follow. Mrs. Poole moved toward the door. Somewhere the blood bond can't reach. If she's clever, and she is, my lord, cleverer than you credited, she'll seek running water, iron bridges, copper pipes, all the mortal things that confuse immortal senses. The Thames. Mrs. Poole paused in the doorway. If I were a woman fleeing an immortal husband, I'd find a ship. Leave London entirely. Go somewhere across salt water where blood magic grows thin." Alistair's hand fell to his side. "Then I've lost her." "You lost her long before tonight." Mrs. Poole's expression softened. "The question is whether you'll chase her to drag her back, or whether you'll finally face the truth you've been avoiding." She left before he could answer. Alistair stood alone in the empty apartment. Evelyn's absence filled the space like fog, thick and choking. He could still smell her, lavender soap and old books, but the scent was already fading. His chest tightened again. The curse, waking, hungry. He looked down at the crumpled note in his hand. Water washes both away. She was running to the river, and he had no choice but to follow. 3 months had passed. Evelyn had chosen Manchester for its size, large enough to disappear into, far enough from Veridian to feel safe. The public library on Deansgate became her refuge. She arrived each morning when the doors opened, leaving only when the gaslights dimmed at closing. The reading room smelled of old paper and coal smoke. Other patrons came and went, but none stayed as long as she did. She had rented a small room above a tailor's shop. The copper wire she'd used to escape now circled the doorframe, twisted into patterns she'd copied from her journal. Iron nails driven into the windowsill. A bowl of salt water on the threshold, changed daily. The precautions had worked. The faint thread of the blood bond remained dormant, a whisper at the edge of her awareness. Some nights she woke feeling it stir, testing the barriers. But it never found her. The library's head clerk was a woman named Miss Pemberton. She had grey hair pulled into a severe bun and spectacles that caught the light. For weeks, she'd watched Evelyn with obvious curiosity. Today, she approached Evelyn's usual table near the back windows. "You've been reading the same type of books for months now," Miss Pemberton said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Folklore, occult histories, accounts of unexplained phenomena." Evelyn's hands tightened on the volume before her. "I find the subject interesting. Most young women prefer novels." Miss Pemberton pulled out the chair across from her. "May I?" Evelyn wanted to refuse, but refusing would draw more attention than allowing it. Miss Pemberton sat. She folded her hands on the table. "I've worked here 20 years. I've learned to recognize certain patterns. People who come seeking answers rather than entertainment. I'm simply curious about local history. These books aren't local." Miss Pemberton tapped the spine of Evelyn's current reading. "This one's about Scottish border legends. Last week you were reading Welsh accounts of the fair folk. The week before, Irish tales of the undying." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She forced herself to meet the older woman's gaze. "Is there a rule against varied reading?" "No rule." Miss Pemberton's expression softened slightly. "But there is a concern. For a young woman who arrives each day looking over her shoulder, who flinches when the door opens, who wears copper wire braided into her hair." Evelyn's hand moved instinctively to her chestnut hair. She'd thought the wire was hidden well enough. "I'm not the only one who's noticed," Miss Pemberton continued. "There's a gentleman who's been asking questions. A doctor," he said. "Dr. Finch. He's been visiting libraries throughout the city, seeking someone matching your description." The blood drained from Evelyn's face. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing yet." Miss Pemberton's gaze was steady. "He offered money for information. Said he was looking for a young woman who'd gone missing from London. Said her family was worried." "I have no family." The words came out sharper than Evelyn intended. "That's what I suspected." Miss Pemberton leaned forward. "He also said she might be confused. Might have strange ideas about protective charms and supernatural dangers. He seemed very interested in anyone researching methods to hide from magical tracking." Evelyn's chair scraped back. She needed to leave. Now. Gather her things from the boarding house and— "Wait!" Miss Pemberton's hand shot out, not quite touching Evelyn's arm. "I haven't told him anything because I don't trust him. A real doctor worried about a patient wouldn't be offering gold sovereigns for information." Evelyn froze. "Gold sovereigns?" "5 of them." Miss Pemberton nodded. "For a simple missing person, that's excessive. It suggests someone very wealthy is looking for you. Someone who wants you found but doesn't want to be seen searching himself." The blood bond pulsed. Just once. but enough to make Evelyn gasp. It had been quiet for weeks. Now it stirred like something waking from sleep. He'd hired someone. Alistair had hired a mortal to do what magic could not. "You need to leave Manchester," Miss Pemberton said. "Dr. Finch will return tomorrow. He's working his way through every library, every boarding house, every place a young woman alone might go. He's methodical. He'll find you eventually." Evelyn's hands trembled. She'd been so careful. The copper, the iron, the running water. She'd thought mortal cunning would be enough, but she'd forgotten that mortals could be hired. That gold could buy human eyes where magic could not reach. "Why are you helping me?" Evelyn whispered. Miss Pemberton stood. "Because I was young once, and I knew what it was to run from someone who thought they owned me." She pulled a slip of paper from her pocket. "There's a coach leaving for Liverpool at dawn. This is the name of a woman there who might help. Tell her Margaret sent you." Evelyn took the paper. Her throat was too tight to speak. Miss Pemberton turned to leave, then paused. "Whatever you're running from, whoever you're running from, I hope you stay ahead of him. But know this, men with that much money don't give up. They just change tactics." The library door closed behind her. Evelyn looked down at the books spread before her. All her research, all her careful study. None of it had prepared her for this. The City Archives building smelled of old paper and lamp oil. Evelyn stood before the heavy oak doors, her breath misting in the cold morning air. She had spent 3 sleepless nights considering Miss Pemberton's warning about Dr. Finch. Running again would be easier, safer, but she was tired of running. The copper wire in her hair felt heavier today, as if the weight of her decision had substance. She pushed open the door. Inside, rows of wooden filing cabinets stretched toward a vaulted ceiling. A clerk sat at a desk near the entrance, his spectacles perched on a thin nose. He looked up with the patient expression of a man who had answered the same questions 1,000 times. "I need to search birth records," Evelyn said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "From 1845 to 1850. The clerk's pen paused over his ledger. "That's quite a range. Do you have a specific name?" "Eleanor." She had chosen the name carefully during her months of research. "Eleanor Blackwood." His expression didn't change. He simply stood and gestured toward a row of cabinets along the far wall. "Births are organised by year, then alphabetically by surname. You'll need to fill out a request form for each year you wish to examine." Evelyn's heart sank. "Each year?" "Archives policy." He returned to his desk and produced a stack of forms. "You may examine 3 years per day, no exceptions." She took the forms. Her hands left damp fingerprints on the paper. The first cabinet revealed nothing, nor the second. By noon, her eyes burned from reading faded handwriting in dim light. The clerk brought her a lamp without being asked, and she wondered if he saw many desperate women searching through old records. She found Eleanor in the 1847 register just as the clock struck 2. Eleanor Margaret Blackwood, born the 3rd March 1847. Mother, Catherine Blackwood. Father, listed as deceased. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She copied the information with trembling fingers, then requested the death records for 1847 through 1850. The clerk raised his eyebrows but said nothing. Catherine Blackwood had died in 1849. Consumption. Eleanor would have been only 2 years old. "Do you keep records of orphanages?" Evelyn asked. The clerk removed his spectacles and cleaned them slowly. "Those would be held by the churches. Each parish maintains its own records." "How many parishes are there in Manchester?" 17. Evelyn closed her eyes. 17 churches, 17 sets of records. It would take weeks to search them all, and Dr. Finch was already looking for her. Every day she spent in Manchester increased the risk that he would find her first, unless she could narrow the search. "Do the death records list an address?" she asked. The clerk consulted his ledger. "Number 14, Copper Street. That area would have fallen under St. Michael's Parish." Evelyn gathered her notes and thanked him. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright after hours in the dim archives. She blinked against the glare and nearly collided with a man on the steps. I do apologize, he said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. He was perhaps 50, with grey threading through dark hair and keen eyes that lingered on her face a moment too long. His coat was well made but travel-worn, and he carried a leather satchel bulging with papers. No harm done, Evelyn said. She tried to step past him. Forgive me, but you look familiar. His voice was pleasant, curious. Have we met? Perhaps at the library on Deansgate? Ice flooded her veins. She forced herself to meet his gaze calmly. I don't believe so. Good day. She walked down the steps at a measured pace, fighting the urge to run. Behind her, she heard him speak to the clerk who had just emerged for his afternoon break. Excuse me, but that young woman, was she researching family records? Evelyn turned the corner and pressed herself against the cold stone wall. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She had been so careful. The copper wire should have hidden her from magical tracking. But Miss Pemberton had warned her. Dr. Finch was using mortal methods. Money, questions, patient, methodical searching. And now he had seen her face. She forced herself to breathe slowly. She had what she needed. A name, a date, a parish. She could find Eleanor's trail without returning to the archives. But Dr. Finch would know she had been here. He would know what she had been searching for. The question was whether he would understand why. Evelyn straightened and began walking towards St. Michael's Church. The copper wire in her hair caught the afternoon light. She had 3 hours before the parish office closed. 3 hours to find Eleanor before Dr. Finch realised what she was looking for. The blood bond lay dormant in her chest, a sleeping snake she dared not wake. But somewhere in this city of smoke and stone, there was a mortal answer to an immortal problem. She just had to find it before Alistair's hunter found her. The community garden smelled of turned earth and lavender. Evelyn knelt between rows of young peas, her fingers working the soil around each tender plant. The copper wire woven through her braid caught the afternoon light. She had found the garden 3 days ago. The plot belonged to an elderly widow who could no longer tend it. Evelyn had offered to help in exchange for a share of the vegetables. It was honest work, simple work, the kind that made her feel human again. The shadow fell across her hands before she heard his footsteps. Mrs. Blackwood? Her fingers froze in the dirt. She knew that voice. Cultured, measured, Dr. Samuel Finch. She did not turn around. That isn't my name anymore. Legally, it remains your name. His shoes appeared at the edge of her vision. Well-polished leather. Expensive. Your husband has been searching for you. Then he can keep searching. Evelyn pressed her palm against the earth. The soil felt warm and solid, real. I'm not going back. He didn't send me to retrieve you. Dr. Finch crouched beside her, his movements careful. He sent me to ensure you're safe. Now she did look at him. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 40, with sandy hair and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. His coat was dark wool, well-tailored but worn at the cuffs. Safe from what? Her voice came out sharper than intended. From him? From the consequences of breaking a blood bond. Dr. Finch pulled a leather journal from his coat. May I show you something? Evelyn stood. Her legs protested after kneeling so long. I don't want to see Lord Blackwood's threats written down. These aren't threats, they're medical observations. He opened the journal to a marked page. I've been studying immortal mortal bonds for 20 years. What you've done is extraordinary. No mortal wife has ever successfully muffled a blood bond for more than a few weeks. Despite herself, Evelyn looked at the page. Diagrams covered the paper, intricate drawings of what looked like veins or roots intertwining and separating. The bond doesn't simply track location, Dr. Finch continued. It shares vitality. The immortal partner provides protection against disease and aging. In return, the mortal provides, he paused, humanity, emotional grounding. A cage is still a cage. Evelyn stepped back. Even if the bars are invisible. I'm not arguing otherwise. Dr. Finch closed the journal. But severing the bond completely would kill you both. The mortal dies within hours. The immortal enters a state called the Thorned Heart. They become something worse than what they were. The words settled like stones in Evelyn's stomach. You're lying. I wish I were. His expression held genuine regret. Lord Blackwood didn't tell you because he thought you'd never need to know. He believed he could keep you safe within the wards forever. He believed wrong. Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron. The dirt left dark streaks across the fabric. I won't go back to being a prisoner. Then don't. Dr. Finch stood slowly. But you need to understand what you're risking. The bond is already weakening. Another month, perhaps 2, and it will break on its own. Good. No, not good. He met her eyes directly. When it breaks, Lord Blackwood will lose his humanity entirely. He'll become the monster he's spent centuries avoiding. And you'll die. Evelyn's throat tightened. She thought of the apartment, the silence, the way Alistair would disappear for days without explanation, the way he looked at her sometimes, as if she was something precious he'd forgotten how to hold. Why are you telling me this? Her voice came out hoarse. What does he want? He wants you to live. Dr. Finch tucked the journal away. He sent me to offer you a choice. Come back willingly, and he'll renegotiate the terms of the bond. You'll have freedom to leave the apartment, to work, to have a life beyond those walls. And if I refuse, then I'm to give you this. He pulled a small glass vial from his pocket. The liquid inside glowed faintly silver. It will sever the bond cleanly. You'll die in your sleep. No pain. He'll suffer the Thorned Heart, but you won't have to watch. Evelyn stared at the vial. Her hands trembled. He's giving you the choice he never gave you before. Dr. Finch set the vial on the garden wall. Freedom or death. But choose quickly. The bond is already fraying. He turned and walked away. His footsteps faded down the cobblestone path. Evelyn stood alone among the pea plants. The vial gleamed in the afternoon sun. Her fingers found the copper wire in her hair. She had spent 3 months running. 3 months learning that mortal cunning could outwit immortal magic. 3 months discovering her own strength. But she had never considered that her freedom might cost 2 lives instead of 1. The café smelled of dark tea and rain-damp wool. Evelyn sat by the window, watching the river slide past like liquid silver. Her copper wire braid rested against her neck, warm from her skin. She had asked Dr. Finch to arrange this meeting. 3 days of thinking in her small rented room had brought her to this moment. The door opened. Alistair stepped inside. He looked thinner than she remembered. His dark suit hung differently on his broad shoulders. When his silver-grey eyes found her across the room, something in his expression cracked open. He crossed to her table, sat without speaking. You came alone, Evelyn said. Her hands stayed flat on the table, steady despite the blood bond humming between them like a plucked string. You asked me to. His voice was rough. I would have done anything you asked. 3 months ago, 3 years ago. But you didn't ask what I wanted. Alistair's no. The admission sat between them. Evelyn traced a knot in the wooden table. Outside, a barge moved downriver, slow and patient. Dr. Finch told me about the Thorned Heart, she said. About what happens if I keep running. Then you know I didn't send him to bring you back. Alistair removed his right glove. The silvery scars on his hand caught the grey light. I sent him to keep you alive. Why? The word came sharper than she intended. You kept me locked in that apartment for 3 years. You never asked if I wanted to stay, never asked what I needed. Because I was afraid. His fingers curled into a fist. Afraid you would leave. Afraid you would die. Afraid of what I would become if I lost you. So you made me a prisoner. Yes. The honesty of it struck her harder than any excuse would have. Evelyn looked at his scarred hand, then at his face. The severe handsomeness that had once intimidated her now just looked tired. I found Eleanor's records, she said. Your first wife. The one who died of consumption. Alistair went very still. How did you... I needed to understand what I was to you. A replacement? A second chance? She met his eyes. Someone you could keep safe this time by locking all the doors? He flinched. Eleanor died because I couldn't protect her from a mortal illness. I thought if I kept you close, kept you safe." His voice broke. "I thought I could prevent it from happening again. By making me disappear." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I wasn't living, Alistair. I was just waiting. Waiting for you to remember I existed." "I know." He looked at his scarred hand. "Mrs. Poole made that very clear. After you left, she told me I had built a beautiful cage and called it love. The river flowed past. A gull cried somewhere over the water. Dr. Finch says the bond can be adjusted," Evelyn said carefully. "Not severed, changed, so I can live my own life without it killing us both. If that's what you want." Alistair's expression was unreadable. "I won't stop you. What do you want?" The question seemed to surprise him. He studied her face as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "I want you to be happy, even if that means I never see you again." Evelyn's chest ached. She thought of 3 years behind locked doors. She thought of the copper wire in her hair, the charms she'd learned, the strength she'd found in running. She thought of the man across from her, who had finally learned to let go. "I don't want the bond severed," she said quietly. "But I need my own life, my own choices." "A key to the door." Alistair nodded slowly. "Finch mentioned a house in Manchester, near the garden where you've been working. You knew where I was?" "For 2 days." His mouth twisted. "I didn't come. I wanted to. But you had asked for space, and I'd already taken too much." Evelyn reached across the table. Her calloused fingers brushed his scarred hand. "Come to Manchester," she said. "Not to keep me, to know me." His hand turned, catching hers. The blood bond sang between them, no longer a chain, but a thread connecting 2 separate lives. "I'll come slowly," he promised, "and I'll knock." Outside, the river carried the city's reflection toward the sea. Inside, 2 people who had been strangers in marriage began the harder work of becoming something real.